Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're looking directly at the ticking clock of our planet's climate crisis. Relying on the absolute latest data from the 2025 Lancet Countdown and global climate trackers, we are cutting straight through the noise. We're going to understand exactly what is happening to our Earth right now. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the reality of climate change. Then, what drives the warming, the impacts on health and nature, mitigation and adaptation strategies, and finally, the urgent call to action. I know the facts ahead are stark, but we'll systematically navigate through all this data straight toward actionable solutions. 429.24. I just want to pause on this massive number for a second. As of April 2025, this is our atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration in parts per million. To put that into perspective, scientists recommend a safe limit of below 350. We are blowing way past that boundary. And you know what? That number is rising rapidly. Section 1. The reality of climate change. Establishing the baseline. We're going to start by stripping away all the noise to focus purely on the undeniable physical science. So let's make sure we're all on the exact same page about how our atmosphere traps heat. Naturally, the greenhouse effect is actually a great thing. Earth receives energy from the sun and radiates infrared energy back into space. Gases like water vapor, CO2, and methane absorb some of that outgoing radiation and re-emit it, keeping our planet at a very comfortable average of 15 degrees Celsius. Without it, we'd literally be freezing at minus 18 degrees. But human activities have dramatically increased the concentration of these gases, severely intensifying this process and trapping a dangerous amount of excess heat. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly the measurements align to tell a definitive, terrifying story. We are currently seeing human-induced warming at 1.37 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels in 2025. And get this, 2023, 2024, and 2025 were the warmest years on record since 1850. In fact, the whole period from 2015 to 2025 is officially the hottest 11-year stretch in recorded history, and it's warming at a rapid rate of 0.27 degrees every single decade. Section 2. What drives the warming? Human impact and amplifying forces. Let's transition to exploring the direct drivers pushing these temperatures higher. We hit a truly terrifying record in 2025. 60.63 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions in a single year. Just trying to visualize that amount of pollution is overwhelming. The lion's share is fossil fuel CO2 emissions, sitting at an all-time high of 38.1 gigatons. Then we have land use change adding 4.1 gigatons, and other emissions making up the remaining 18.43 gigatons. Burning fossil fuels for energy, transportation, and industry is for sure the undeniable primary engine of this crisis. Let's move to and see how this builds into terrifying, self-sustaining positive feedback loops. It's like a chain reaction. First, warming melts ice, which reduces the Earth's reflectivity. Because there's less white ice to reflect the sun, more solar energy is absorbed directly by the planet. This extra heat then thaws permafrost, releasing trapped methane, which is a greenhouse gas way more potent than CO2, and that in turn accelerates the warming even further. The cycle just feeds itself. Which brings us to another extremely critical number, 3. At our current emission rates, we have only about 3 years left of our 130 gigaton carbon budget if we want to maintain just a 50% chance of staying under 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. The math here is completely unforgiving. Section 3. Impacts on health and nature. The toll of a warming world. Now, let's shift our focus from the planetary science to the devastating real-world toll on human beings and natural ecosystems. According to the 2025 Lancet Countdown report, the human cost is staggering. We're looking at 546,000 average annual heat-related deaths, 154,000 deaths strictly from wildfire smoke in 2024 alone. Then consider the extreme physical and economic toll on the working class. 639 billion potential labor hours lost to heat exposure. That translates to $1.09 trillion in productivity losses. Plus, droughts and heat waves have pushed 123 million more people into food insecurity. This is the very real human cost of those temperature graphs we just looked at. And this brilliantly illustrates a glaring disconnect in global priorities. Governments spent nearly $1 trillion, $956 billion to be exact, subsidizing fossil fuels in 2023. Contrast that massive funding, which is literally fueling the crisis, against the comparatively tiny $26 billion given to developing countries in international adaptation finance. It's a shocking irony, isn't it? Actually, 15 countries spent more subsidizing fossil fuels than they did on their entire national health budgets. Concurrent with that human toll, our natural world is being destroyed right now in real time. Global sea levels have risen 23 centimeters since 1900. Between 2023 and 2024, glaciers lost 450 gigatons of mass. Forest destruction skyrocketed by 24%, hitting 128 million hectares in 2023. And marine heatwave days, they've more than tripled. Rapid ecosystem collapse isn't some distant future projection. It's happening today. Section 4, Mitigation and Adaptation Strategies. The Roadmap to Survival. Let's pivot from the dire reality into our solutions roadmap, looking neutrally at how we can actually, mechanically fix this problem. This is the strict carbon budget timeline we absolutely must follow. Now, we must transparently note that we have already missed the critical target for global emissions to peak by 2025. Moving forward, the aggressive target is a 43% emission reduction by 2030. To hold warming to 1.5 degrees, we need to hit net zero by 2032. If we aim for 1.7 degrees, the absolute final deadline for net zero is 2050. But we have to confront a deeply sobering reality from the State of Climate Action 2025 report: zero. 0 out of 45 climate action indicators are on track to achieve their 2030 targets. Global climate action expanded by only 1% in 2024. For most of the indicators heading in the right direction, they literally need a fourfold acceleration to actually hit those targets. When we talk about adaptation, meaning adjusting to the climate impacts we've already locked in, we face a massive financial hurdle. There's a staggering 12 to 14 times shortfall in funding required. Developing nations need between $310 and $365 billion annually to build early warning systems and resilient infrastructure. They are receiving just $26 billion. That adaptation finance gap is just massive. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are highly effective bright spots and massive economic opportunities already in motion. For instance, renewable energy generated a record 12% of global electricity in 2024, and that created 16 million jobs worldwide. Plus, 144 countries have initiated national adaptation plans, which means 437 million people are now living with greater resilience. Furthermore, technologies like ocean-based carbon removal could deliver up to 35% of the needed emission reductions. This proves we already have the technology and strategies to adapt. We simply have to accelerate our efforts. Section 5, the urgent call to action. The ultimatum. We are entering the final section here, looking at exactly what must be done. So the crucial point is this: to seize our rapidly closing window. These are the collective and individual actions mechanically required. We must demand an end to that $956 billion in fossil fuel subsidies and heavily support a rapid transition to renewable energy. We must aggressively protect our natural carbon sinks and restore forests. On an individual level, shifting to plant-rich diets could save over 10 million lives yearly by reducing diet-related deaths and lowering the agricultural carbon footprint. And finally, we absolutely must invest aggressively in climate adaptation for our most vulnerable communities. As Dr. Jeremy Farrar of the World Health Organization perfectly puts it, the climate crisis is a health crisis. Every fraction of a degree of warming costs lives and livelihoods. This isn't just about abstract statistical anomalies or distant polar ice anymore. Every fraction of a degree is quite literally a matter of life and death. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to reflect on. We have the stark data. We have the technological solutions. The choice presented in the science today is entirely up to us. Will we act now or pay later with our health, our economies, our ecosystems, and our children's future? Thank you so much for learning with me today in this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and most importantly, keep pushing for solutions.